The reason they felt they needed to do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive, that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers, maybe the audience of The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit this last
week. Whoopi Goldberg just hit her breaking point, and it happened live with the entire world watching. And no, it wasn't heat stroke. It was Charlie Kirk dropping bombshells like he mistook The View for a no-holds-barred truth slam. One moment, she was riding high on confidence. The next, she looked like she'd seen a ghost, one draped in a Turning Point USA hoodie. So what did Charlie say that had Whoopi blinking like someone yanked the cord on her teleprompter mid-sentence? Buckle up, because this wasn't a discussion. It was a demolition. This on-air unraveling had more fire than a Real Housewives reunion hosted by Ben Shapiro in a lace-front wig.
Kirk maintains that Turning Point USA is not affiliated with Nazis, anti-Semitism, or white supremacist. In a strongly worded tweet, the 28-year-old stated, "Talking to lawyers, many think we have a strong case. You cannot smear minors as Nazis and get away with it. It impacts them for the rest of their life. Hashtag sue The View."
Whoopi, she knows she runs the room. The self-anointed queen of daytime discourse holds court from her velvet perch, tossing out opinions like royal decrees with that signature "I'm never wrong" vibe that could power all 5 boroughs. She's been untouchable, wrapped in layers of clapping co-hosts, cushy applause, and bulletproof monologues, her kingdom a TV set, her crown absolute confidence. And for a long time, no one dared challenge her throne. Until today. Because today, that invincible bubble of hers, it burst, loud enough to make the algorithm flinch. Enter Charlie Kirk. Yeah, not exactly the name you'd expect to rattle the Queen's cage, but out of left field, here he comes, armed with a mic, a digital stack of receipts, and that kind of swagger you only get from binge-watching your own takedowns. No red carpet, no studio lights, just fire and facts straight from his podcast bunker. Did he show up on The View? Not even close. He didn't need to. He hit record, dropped his rebuttal. Like a bomb, took a sip of his coffee, and let the digital dust storm do the rest. What lit the fuse? A smug, Whoopi soundbite, sugar-coated with laughter, nods, and the usual studio cheer. But Kirk caught the slip. That one off note in the gospel of Whoopi hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone to say, "Hold up." And he did. He zoomed in, dissected the moment like a seasoned surgeon, and laid it bare for everyone to see. No yelling, no theatrics, just laser-sharp critique wrapped in calm conviction. It wasn't a meltdown. It was a masterclass in the art of the clapback, served, cold and calculated by a guy who came not to argue, but to flip the whole script.
Well, fast forward to this morning. The host apologized before quickly cutting to commercial. Watch.
Welcome back. In Monday's conversation about Turning Point USA, I put the young people at the conference in the same category as the protesters outside. And I don't like it when people make assumptions about me. And it's not any better when I make assumptions about other people, which I did. So, my bad. I'm sorry.
First came the surgical strike. Charlie didn't just clap back, he carved up Whoopi's argument like a masterclass in intellectual takedowns. No shouting, no theatrics, just methodical precision analysis that made media skeptics everywhere feel vindicated. He did what people have been pleading for someone to do. He checked the receipts calmly, ruthlessly, and without flinching. And those receipts? He didn't just flash them, he brandished them like a katana, slicing clean through the flimsy scaffolding of Whoopi's claims. This wasn't a rebuttal. It was a full-blown assembly manual of contradictions laid out piece by piece, pegs and all. He even included the confusing extra parts just to prove a point, and he did it all with the cool assurance of a guy who knows. His mic drop moment is about to break the internet before the waiter brings the check. The facts didn't just nudge Whoopi's take, they moonwalked over it like a viral dance-off. Her polished line got spun, clipped, flipped, and turned into a meme tsunami. Instagram Reels exploding, TikTok stitched to infinity, YouTube Shorts flooded, and Reddit a full-blown frenzy. Thread after thread, digital detectives dissecting. Her greatest hits like they just unearthed a lost season of cable news bloopers.
So on Monday, we talked about the fact that there were openly neo-Nazi demonstrators outside the Florida Student Action Summit of the Turning Point USA group. We want to make clear that these demonstrators were gathered outside the event and that they were not invited or endorsed by Turning Point USA. A Turning Point USA spokesman said the group, quote, 100% condemns those ideologies, and said Turning Point USA security tried to remove the neo-Nazis from the area but could not because they were on public property. Also, Turning Point USA wanted us to clarify that this was a Turning Point USA summit and not a Republican Party event.
Even people who hadn't glanced at The View since Obama's first term suddenly had opinions, loud ones, because Charlie pulled back the curtain, and behind it, just a shaky pile of smug sound bites with zero structural integrity. The aftermath? Absolutely chef's kiss. Then came the questions, and not the soft, couch-comfy kind. These were live wires. Wait, did she seriously just make that up? How did that get applause? That's when the hiss started, the slow leak deflating the glossy daytime TV balloon that had floated untouched for years. Here's the twist. Whoopi didn't get roasted in a flashy studio showdown. She got digitally dismantled by a guy who never even stepped on the set. Her cozy stage, once wrapped in a safety net of guards and clapping co-hosts, suddenly felt exposed. You could hear it in the nervous laughter, the silence stretching between lines, the jokes that landed like flat. Soda. Something shifted. Whoopi was still there. Same chair, same cadence, same head tilt, but the spark was dimmer. That firebrand vibe had cooled to a flicker. Her rhythm started to feel like reruns, looping through old magic while her eyes scanned the crowd like, we're still good, right?
Her disgusting, gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. Sunny Hostin goes on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men, actually, voting more for him. And you have, and black men was not the story. We're not the story here because they voted almost 80% for the vice president.
Right. Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom.
Because here's the thing. It was never just about Charlie's words. It was about the shift he exposed. Something bigger. You don't need studio lights, a glam squad, or a tag team of co-hosts to call out the absurd. All it takes is a camera, a Wi-Fi connection, and the guts to say out loud what millions have been whispering for years. No yelling, no theatrics. Just facts delivered so cleanly they shattered the illusion like glass under a spotlight. Once the cracks appear, there's no one not seeing them. Charlie didn't come in hot. He came in cold, calm, clinical. The kind of quiet that cuts deeper than any rant. He didn't speak like someone in a fight. He spoke like someone reading the ending to a story he'd already finished. While Whoopi leaned on clap cues and glossy transitions, Charlie brought none of that, just raw, relentless logic. It wasn't loud, it was lethal, like a cat slowly, pushing a glass off the edge of a counter, eyes locked the whole time. No rush, no hesitation. Just pure, deliberate savagery. And the wild part? It hit hard. The internet caught the scent of something real, something off, and went full bloodhound. Charlie's calm dismantling started circulating like classified intel. YouTubers lit up with thumbnails screaming, "Did Charlie just end the View?" TikTok turned it into an anthem. Twitter threads unraveled with receipts. Even the casual crowd started noticing the repetition, the shallow hot takes, and that worn-out moral high ground routine that once breezed by on charm alone.
The group sent a scathing cease and desist letter after hosts on The View suggested that Turning Point had embraced neo-Nazis who showed up outside the event.
Let them in.
President, open your
You
mouth
let them in and you knew what they were.
Right.
So you are.
But let's be clear, Whoopi didn't fold. She didn't cry. She didn't walk off set. She stayed right there, kept talking, but the vibe was way off, tangibly off. This wasn't the kind of meltdown you clip for daytime drama. It was slower, quieter, like watching a fire burn out in real time. Each new hot take landed with a thud, ending not in applause but in silence. You know it's bad when a would-be mic drop is followed by a cough. No chuckles, no claps, just dead air and a blank stare aimed somewhere off camera like she was scanning for backup that didn't show up. That's the sting of losing the crown, not with a headline but with a hush. Nobody announces it. You just look around and realize the crowd isn't there anymore. Even the producers felt it. The firebrand topics cooled to lukewarm, the rants got shorter, the punchlines safer. Everything started sounding like it was triple-checked against a memo, titled, "Let's not go viral again." At least not like that. And that's where Charlie's move hit brilliance. He didn't charge the stage. He didn't have to. He just quietly siphoned the oxygen out of the room. No clash, no chaos, just one-sided exposure carried out with sniper precision and the sleight-of-hand calm of a magician pulling the rug out mid-sentence. He didn't argue. He revealed, and that hit deeper than any shouting match could have hoped to, because for once, it wasn't about Charlie. It was about what he said, something millions had felt but never seen so clearly. Maybe all that daytime polish was just gloss, over a hollow script.
I want to make a quick clarification about the neo-Nazis at the Turning Point event. They were outside protesters. My point was more metaphorical, that you embraced them at your thing, I felt.
This wasn't about politics. It wasn't red versus blue. It was raw, unfiltered logic going toe-to-toe with overproduced fluff. And the second that logic hit the feed with a solid Wi-Fi connection, viewers snapped awake. They realized they'd been applauding clever one-liners that collapsed the moment you Googled them, the loudest part of it all. The silence, not just from Whoopi, but from the whole machine that used to ride to her defense without hesitation. This time, nothing. No. Spin, no rebuttal, just a freeze frame that spoke louder than words. Because honestly, what could they even say? The facts were right there, logic locked and loaded. Any attempt at a comeback would have been like tossing gas on a fire already raging. So what did they do? Exactly what big media always does when the heat gets uncomfortable. They blinked and rolled on. But the internet doesn't forget. It doesn't hit next just because the network does. Weeks rolled by. Topics shifted, but that clip kept circulating. Still reposted. Still cutting. It turned into a digital receipt for the exact moment the mask slipped, when Whoopi's untouchable presence took a clean, quiet hit. No explosion, just a slice so sharp it left no blood, only an echo. And Charlie? He didn't linger, didn't brag, didn't even stick around for the fallout. He walked off like a man who demolished a building and didn't bother to check the rubble. That's how modern takedowns work. They don't shout, they drop the match, and let the internet do the rest. One clip, one irrefutable point, and suddenly, you're not fighting a person. You're fighting a meme wave, a viral tide, a swarm of stitches and receipts that never stop coming.
Sean, something that struck me in the cease and desist letter was the sentence that specifically the View host insidiously and cavalierly stated that TPUSA let the neo-Nazis into its event, metaphorically embraced them, and it went on. Insidiously and cavalierly. And I felt that perfectly summed up exactly what those women were saying, which is something so deeply toxic and also so lightly thrown out there.
And so false. I mean, these were protesters outside of the event, right? They couldn't get in. These were not neo-Nazis inside of Turning Point USA. They were protesting outside on public grounds, and Turning Point tried to remove them.
And Whoopi, for all the poise, the stage presence, the showbiz swagger, didn't just face off with Charlie. She collided headfirst with the one force no celebrity can outtalk, outshine, or outspin, a timeline that keeps the receipts. No shouting, no fireworks, just that cold, creeping realization that no matter how loud you speak, the truth speaks louder. This wasn't just another spicy clip for the algorithm. It was a shift, a jolt, the kind of cultural wake-up call that whispers, your live love persona isn't profound. It's just painfully cringe. This wasn't noise. This was impact, measured, lasting, unignorable. Charlie Kirk, armed with nothing but Wi-Fi and the steady calm of a man with way too many PowerPoint slides, did what countless blue-check battles, viral meltdowns, and dramatic walkouts couldn't. He pierced the illusion, the idea that shows like The View were sacred, unshakable truth temples. Over, just like that. Let's be honest, daytime TV's been coasting like it holds the patent on common sense, backed by glitter sets, choreographed outrage, and applause buttons more obedient than a golden retriever in a vest. Hosts could toss out logic-light takes and still get cheered like they'd reinvented peace on Earth. Truth didn't matter. Volume did. Then Charlie slid in. No invite, no fireworks, no gimmick, just him, a camera, and enough unfiltered clarity to break the fourth wall like it was made of clearance rack plexiglass.
I don't want to say too much, but we're going to have a lot of fun at the Department of Education. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Can I tell you something? Like, I've had quite a few people contact me about that particular post. Like, I'm sure I have 1/100th of what you're getting, but people are contacting me about cabinet posts. I'm like, I got
look,
nothing.
I mean, yeah, I'm actually, after this conversation, heading to Mar-a-Lago for a week, and we have a lot to sift through, and if I could be helpful, I have asked. I want to be actively involved in all things education, as you can imagine.
And here's the real twist. It wasn't even what he said, it was how he said it. Calm, clean data stacked like receipts from CBS. No dramatic music, no flashy edits, just cold, hard facts. The kind of clarity that doesn't need fanfare because the truth, when it's real, doesn't have to shout. It just lands and leaves a mark. Charlie Kirk didn't come with anger. He came with receipts. While the show spun in its usual cyclone of opinions, he calmly pointed to the chaos and said, "Here's the contradiction, here's the actual data, here's why this doesn't add up." It was like watching someone patiently untangle a gold chain while the other person yells, "It's a noose!" The vibe wasn't fury, it was disappointment, and that tone cuts deeper than any shout. Suddenly, Whoopi, the longtime queen of midday commentary, didn't look untouchable. She didn't even look controversial. She looked human, flawed, like someone who hadn't been fact-checked in a long time, and it didn't take a rival on stage to do it. Just one guy in a hoodie armed with a pie chart crashing the shouting match. That was the twist. The moment a high-budget segment gets dissected by a YouTuber in casual clothes, that's when the Matrix glitches. That's when you realize the Emperor's wardrobe wasn't royal. It was thrifted from a BuzzFeed quiz. What made it even more iconic? Whoopi wasn't even there. No cameras on her face, no fiery crosstalk. Charlie dropped his truth from an entirely different universe, and somehow the shockwave still hit. No gloves, no ring, just facts delivered with surgical chill. And the next day, that studio chair creaked a little louder, not because she was rattled, but because the illusion cracked. She didn't get wrecked in a live debate. She got eclipsed by a monologue she never saw coming, in a timeline where Google searches expose more than zingers ever could. And that's the real plot twist. Whoopi didn't have to approve it. The internet didn't wait for her permission. That's how echo chambers work. They bounce your own voice back so much you forget people outside are doing their homework.
Do you think if a liberal came to speak at University of Kentucky, they'd give an open mic like I just did to a conservative and had a discussion like this? No, they wouldn't. Because speech is not a left-wing value. That's why Chuck Schumer went on the Senate floor and called for the censorship of a cable television program. I think it's rather clear there's one side that is trying to do everything they can to shut one side up, and one side that's trying to open up the marketplace of ideas.
Suddenly, The View wasn't just a show anymore. It became a full-on case study. Viewers weren't just clapping. They were dissecting, replaying, breaking it down like digital detectives on a mission. And when the truth landed, no drama, no fireworks, just a quiet roast powered by Wi-Fi, memes, and a pile of contradictions. That's the real power of a quiet takedown. No stage, no mic drop, just one clean fact dropped into the timeline like a pebble. And suddenly, the whole applause machine wobbles. No shouting, no viral meltdown. Just the crushing weight of truth hitting a tower built on recycled talking points. Now, the big question isn't if she'll recover. Of course she will. It's TV. Everyone gets retakes, reshoots, rebrands. The game resets every day. That's not the point. The real question is, can the audience ever unsee it? Can they still clap like nothing cracked? Still nod along like the wizards are still magical? Because once you've peeked behind the curtain, it's hard to pretend the magic's real. Once the trick's exposed, it's just wires and smoke. So, next time Whoopi drops one of those dramatic, eyebrow-raising speeches like, "It's gospel from the mountaintop," just remember, somewhere out there, a camera's rolling, a podcast's uploading, and someone's calmly running the numbers. No drama, just data, just truth, and the internet, oh, it'll be watching. Thumbs ready, calculators out, memes queued. Up in drafts, this wasn't just a takedown, it was a digital wake-up call. And it didn't have to scream to shake the room. If you're tired of the noise and here for the receipts, go ahead and hit that like button, smash subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.